Get the latest weather information at 940WCIT.com. Limaland, it's time to have your voice heard. Talk with Ron Williams, presented by Jerry Lewis's McDonald's Restaurants. Reach the show by calling 419-228-9494 or 888-894-3776. Live from the Basement Doctor Studio, overlooking downtown Lima, here's Ron Williams.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Tom Lucente, and you're listening to the Talk with Ron Williams radio show on 940 WCIT and 940WCIT.com, live from the beautiful Basement Doctor Studio located at 57 Town Square in Lima, Ohio.
Downtown Lima.
Downtown Lima, Ohio. We have a bastion of great weather.
Oh, yeah. It's another blustery day in the American Midwest. That is
exactly.
for certain.
And in case you haven't figured that out, I'm not Ron Williams. Like I said before, I'm Tom Lucente, and I'm here with your friend and mine, Don Kissick. Don,
good afternoon.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome back, you mean?
Welcome back to the show, I guess. Semantics.
I know. I'm good for that.
It's always good to have you on here. I know you work
second shift, yeah.
Second shift, so you can only stay for the first
half hour segment, and then I've got to do that crazy thing called working for a living.
Now, is it at a union shop where you work?
No, it is not.
I was going to say, if it's a union shop, you can just blow it off and stay the whole time, or come in late, drunk, and get a pass.
I mean, it could be like in the 70s. I've heard stories about how UAW workers on, I don't know which one of the automakers it was. I mean, there were stories of them building beer can pyramids at their workstation, allegations of people going into the men's room to shoot up heroin, things like that.
Doesn't everybody do that? Oh, wait a minute. I'm not allowed to say that.
There's libertarianism, and then there's being a libertine. We're not libertines.
Some people don't know the difference.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Well, at least, the hardcore conservatives, they say there's no difference.
Yeah, that's for sure.
They don't understand the freedom. They don't understand freedom to fail.
Right, exactly. So, what's going on? You usually come in with a list of stuff you want to. Is there anything specific you wanted to talk about?
Oh, my goodness. There's always plenty of stuff I want to talk about.
There's plenty of stuff going on.
Just ask my wife, Sarah. She'll tell you there's no shutting me up when I get going. But speaking of Sarah, though, we have taken positions with the Libertarian Party of Ohio, so that's an update since we last spoke.
Okay,
we've both been appointed to represent the 5th Congressional District on the on the party's Central Committee here in Ohio. Now, some of that's probably just going way over a lot of people's heads. At the state level, political parties are represented, as far as leadership goes, through a public vote. Ohio is kind of unique in that regard, where Central Committee leaders are publicly elected in the primary process, and then if there's an opening, those will get filled through an appointment vote by current seat holders. And Sarah and I were both appointed to represent the 5th Congressional District, and that's how the Libertarian Party of Ohio breaks down that representation. It's based on congressional districts. Like the ORP has a little bit different system for determining how it's geographically represented. They've got I think 54, 55 seats on their Central Committee. Ours has 32 if we're at full capacity. And one thing you and I have also tackled before with regard to the state party, there was some uncertainty about its future. Not just the whole ballot access point,
right?
With the fact that Charlie Earl got disallowed from the 2014 ballot, and then, of course, SB 193, the ballot access update law that got passed. There was also some questions about leadership for the state party. Without getting into too many details, also, if nothing else, I don't want to be in violation of any of the party's bylaws about discussing in-depth business. There were some concerns about leadership and the direction the party was going. And there were enough people that shared my misgivings that already had a seat or another position in leadership. People one by one began resigning. We had several resignations within a 24 to 48-hour period at the end of December, beginning of January. It was bad enough that it prompted our now former chair, Kevin Nedler, to say, all right, I'm going to step down because I'm part of people's displeasure. I'm kind of paraphrasing the situation a little bit. I'm trying to summarize. Well, and when that happened, a lot of people said, you know what? I rescind my resignation. And there were some procedural concerns about that taking place. But
I quit, then I unquit.
Yeah. But the thing was, it was looking like Atlas was going to shrug on the state party. I mean, it's... If you're not familiar with Ayn Rand's, literary works,
the people who need to get that got that.
Yeah, exactly. Instead, we actually had our own version of 1776, the Revolution. That appears to be what's taking shape. And I went from being very distraught about what was going to happen to the party to now being very excited and hopeful for the future. There's a big fight up ahead because we're still waiting on a ruling. On a lawsuit that members of the party filed last year or at the end of 2013 to fight SB 193, just like we've done in the past. We're still waiting on a ruling on that in federal courts, so that could be any day. Now, they may have come today. I just don't know yet.
Right,
I got the update. We thought we'd get the ruling or a judge's decision last month. Still waiting. And it's putting a lot of things in limbo. In fact, we had one gentleman who's going to run for village council in New Philadelphia. His petitions were thrown out because it's a partisan race, and he submitted his petitions as a member of the Libertarian Party. Now, in previous rulings, the judge had said that petitions are not to be thrown out for lack of recognition yet, since there was still appeals going on. So that's going to be a new battle in and of itself there. But we're still working on it. And the Board of Elections in that county even cited their advice from the Ohio Secretary of State's office that these were invalid because the state of Ohio does not recognize the LPO at the moment. If the court rules against us, if we want to be on the ballot next year, we'll probably try and appeal that decision as well. We'll have no choice but to begin a very aggressive and active petitioning campaign to get it back on the ballot. That'll be fun in and of itself. One thing that I am pushing for is the notion that, and this is going to be something that you really hate, go the referendum route. The thing is, we need to get people elected in order to change these, screwball laws. Right. How do you determine ballot access for a political party? Well, of course, the parties that are already there, the two parties, they are going to make sure it's as challenging as it can be, and rewrite the rules right when anyone can actually get all their ducks in a row. They've been doing this, since Ken Blackwell was Secretary of State. No,
they've been doing this since 1770s.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But the current, two legacy parties in Ohio, this is the game they've been playing very aggressively. Let me word it that way. They've been playing it very aggressively for 10 years now. And the only way we're going to actually get that level playing field to have that shot is, to do what you hate so much, get a referendum on the ballot and tell everyone and make sure that and make sure we have our message straight. This is just about getting onto the ballot. This is not about taking away anyone's right to vote, which is, someone's going to try and present that argument.
Oh, of course.
Just like with the fight over SB 5. It's all about teachers and firefighters. Never mind the fact that you've got a whole plethora of other public employees, abusing, their situation of employment. Let's make it all about teachers and firefighters. And the average voter that's not as well read got all upset. Well, I don't want to be told, I don't want to see my teachers, get messed over. Firefighters, they're heroes. I'm going to vote no on this.
Not to mention those crazy commercials that made it sound like if your house burns down, the firefighters will be on the other side of town and won't be able to get to your house in time. What the heck? That had nothing to do with anything.
Oh, I know. But like I said, it's politics of fear. And instead of Democrats doing this, bet your bottom dollar, if we can get that on the ballot, it'll be Republicans doing the same thing.
Well, it's funny you bring this up. For ballot access, obviously the two parties in power write the rules that prevent anybody else from coming in. There was one state, and I wrote about this a couple years ago, so I don't recall the details, but there was one state that the Democratic Party had gotten so powerful that they were rewriting the rules to keep the Republicans off the ballots. So, I mean, that's what happens, and that's why this is why I always say, people out there listening will complain that whenever I say this, but everybody, there should be no separate access rules for anybody. Everybody should have the exact same rules to get on the ballot.
Oh, I agree. And that's what's hilarious is in Ohio, the petitioning threshold as an independent candidate is astronomical.
Right, and it's like 25 signatures if you're a Republican or a Democrat. Well, depending on the election and where it's at. 50.
It's 50 for most offices except for a statewide race. Then it's 1,000. Minor parties. Right now, as it stands, it's 25 signatures for non-statewide, and then 500 for any kind of office that's voted on statewide. And then, of course, for local elections, that is actually determined locally. They will the local jurisdiction will determine, with the exception of counties, they have to follow the state laws. But local jurisdictions, they determine. What the threshold will be.
Right, and it's silly. To me, it's silly that if you're a Republican or a Democrat, you don't need as many signatures to say as a Libertarian or an Independent. Well, what the heck? Everybody should be able to get on the ballot. And if you now that we're going down this road, the Presidential Commission on debates. Yep. Oh my God! If you're mathematically capable of winning the race based on the electoral math. Mm-hmm. You should be on that stage. Well, I don't care. There's three rules, I think. The first two are easy to obtain, I guess. But that third one, you got to be polling 15%. Right. That's nonsense.
Oh, exactly. And again, it's designed to lock out. Oh, absolutely. Others. I mean, right. And the Republicans really pushed for this after the 1992 vote, the election when Ross Perot pulled in 20% of the vote. And he wasn't polling, I don't think he was polling at 15% yet when the debates happened. A lot of people heard him. They said, this is someone who makes sense.
Exactly.
They voted for him.
They get on there. It's like a catch-22 if you got to be polling so high, but you can't pull so high because you're not getting the same exposure.
Well, yeah, exactly. And the GOP did this with Gary Johnson, who was our candidate 3 years ago, in that they said you've got to be polling at 2%. In the major polls to be considered in the GOP pre-primary debates. Well, they never included his name. Well, they said, you're not polling high enough. Well, include my name, and they just blew him off. And that's when he decided, before most of the cutoff dates, I'm going to change parties. And unfortunately, his campaign manager messed up in Michigan. They actually missed the cutoff date. The cutoff deadline by 2 minutes on the filing date. Yeah, and of course, rules are rules. They played that game in Michigan. Yeah. Their statewide offices are all Republican. Of course, they didn't let him. They insisted that what they call the sore loser law applied to him by 2 minutes. But again, that's a failure of the people responsible because when I first time I ever ran for office, I had my petitions in 2 days before the deadline.
I was going to say, why would you wait to the last?
Exactly. So, I mean, so you had failures on both sides of on that one. But for the most part, he made his decision. He made it promptly. And there was much rejoicing across, capital L libertarians in America.
Is he going to run again in 2016?
He has declared his intent. And so we're excited about that because he is the best qualified person.
I think he's probably been the best libertarian candidate that I can recall.
Yeah. He already comes in with name recognition. He comes in with past elected experience, having served 2 terms as governor of New Mexico.
Right.
We've had other guys like Michael Bednarik, Harry Brown, great philosophers, bright men.
So, absolutely. But
they just they didn't have the resources and the means. Of course, they spoke the language at the national conventions, every 4 years. So they were the ones who people said, or I should say, forgetting the term, of course, the delegates. They're the ones who wooed the most delegates. But unfortunately, they didn't have the resources and they didn't have the context necessary to really break into the national exposure. Gary Johnson has that. It's up to us at the state level to start fighting the machinery at all levels. Where instead of leaving it all on his campaign, there's something that we can be doing at the state level to make sure people know his name, like right now.
He made some great videos during his last election.
He did. If he were to solicit my advice, which I know he won't, I would say ditch the peace sign T-shirt. I mean, it's great for the college students. I mean, once or twice was fine, but he kind of relied on that too heavily. Like in 2010 when I ran for Congress, I was really hoping my gimmick of the please help, we'll work for a better America, homeless looking sign. I tried to use that as a gimmick to see if I couldn't generate publicity. Well, I kind of leaned on it too heavily, and probably didn't get as good a percentage of the vote as I could have.
Right.
Now that we've beaten that horse to death once again, another topic I wanted to discuss. This came from a friend of mine. You've probably seen me debate him in social media before. We served in the Navy together. He posted a link to my personal profile. It was a satire article, but the headline was, "Having the brakes removed from your vehicle is a matter of personal choice." Yeah, exactly. And it was a hilarious article. It was hilarious that I just dismissed it on the argumentational term of reductio ad absurdum. In other words, it's that describes the argumentation fallacy, the debate fallacy of you pull up the most absurd or extreme example that disproves or works against an idea or a philosophy, and therefore say everything that you profess is wrong because of this. And I, in shorter terms than that, I said, I'm not too worried about what a parody, article is going to say about libertarianism. So then he posed the question of what the real topic was that he wanted, to get me to address is the topic of vaccinations, because that's been, in the news lately.
Right.
Now, I'm not an anti-vacciner. I kind of was for a while, but, I've learned that the main culprit that people were concerned about was thimerosal. That is the preservative in most commercial vaccines that does contain, some amounts of mercury.
Right.
And even it doesn't help, the situation. The discussion is that several years ago, the federal government even released a report acknowledging there may be unacceptable levels of mercury in thimerosal. So now that's just been extra fuel for the fire in that topic. Like when my son was born and Sarah and I were discussing vaccinations, I said, of course I'm not going to go against vaccinating him. That's just ridiculous. It's like saying, people are hurt, therefore no science. That's kind of the logic there. But I was willing to spring for the extra money for preservative-free options on all the vaccines that children need and should get. Well, she, of course, didn't listen to me and went ahead and got the standard vaccines. But the thing is, the vaccines don't have thimerosal anymore. The only one that does, from what I've read, the only one that still does is the flu vaccine.
Okay, I thought they removed it from all vaccines. But
the childhood vaccines, it has been removed.
Okay.
But based on what I've read, flu vaccine still carries it. But there are other debates on the flu vaccine anyway, as far as how effective it is.
Well, it's pointless. They're guessing which strain of the flu is going to hit the area, and then they give you that shot. And if it's
and actually a significant percentage of people who get the flu shot end up getting sick because of the vaccine.
Absolutely.
But again,
even in the military, you're required to get it every year. I almost always was able to find a way to avoid getting that shot.
But, that's the flu vaccine. That's not childhood vaccinations against measles and polio.
Right.
You're an idiot. Let's face it, you're an idiot. But his point is, the reason why he brought this up, and I'm not going to mention my name, but my old friend, if you're listening, here you go. We're finally tackling it with only a couple minutes left. He wanted to know is, libertarianism is based on the notion that personal choices should not have a law around them when they don't cause harm to another person. Well, if family A chooses not to vaccinate their kids, they get sick with one of those diseases, and they make a child from family B ill. Well, that's a personal choice now that actually has done harm, he asserts.
Well,
that's done harm to someone else.
But if someone else had the vaccines, they wouldn't be infected.
Well, yeah, in theory, I know. So basically you're talking about, two family A's that are going to put each other at risk. Or, well, let's look at it this way, too. I'm going to play my own devil's advocate here. Well, what about someone who is immunocompromised and medically should not get vaccinated? Aren't these people now then unnecessarily putting someone else at risk?
Well, isn't that kid putting somebody else at risk by not being vaccinated? Because he can't be vaccinated?
Oh, I know. I mean, for crying out loud.
To me, and I wrote about this on Sunday. It is still a choice. I mean, we're faced with a choice between having the government forcibly inject something into our systems that we may or may not need,
or want,
as opposed. But see, here's what people are missing from the whole debate is
right. Okay.
In 48 states. It's already voluntary. There is no law mandating you get your children vaccinated.
Right, exactly.
Except in two states. There's 2 states where you have to do it, and there's no way to get out of it. But everywhere else, if you don't want to have your children vaccinated, you don't have to have your children vaccinated.
And I'm trying not to go into cute and clever arguments because I so badly want to throw in his face whatever happened to my body, my choice. But that's kind of going back to the whole reductio ad absurdum that I mentioned earlier, just taking an extreme example and saying, because he's trying to say, here's an example, people are harmed, therefore more government.
Right.
Exactly. And I'm trying to say, unintended consequences, therefore much less government.
Right. Well, and people aren't being. I mean, people right now today, vaccines are voluntary, and I don't see huge epidemics of any of these diseases. Oh, swinging through Middle America. We're not dropping dead from polio out there. We're not. The measles isn't running rampant throughout our schools. So.
No, I agree.
Most people, if given the choice, will probably get vaccinated.
Well, my old friend, he raised what I think is a valid argumentational point. At least it wasn't this notion of it wasn't some ridiculous argument. It started off with that on the whole, taking the brakes out of my car, article.
Right.
But it was a valid point. I wanted to try and address it on the air and get some conversation generated on that because it kind of adds a few shades of gray to what otherwise is a black and white, issue.
Right.
Your choice as a parent, whether or not to have your child vaccinated. He wants to say, but his argument always is, what is a solution? He's all about solutions. And it was really, well, I know, but it was really funny. The first time we had that kind of discussion, he even acknowledged, we were talking about, it was a discussion on economics. He even said, I get it. You're arguing for laissez-faire, but you still need to give me a solution to the problem, this problem, that problem, whatever it was we were discussing at the time. And I said to him, well, if you understand what laissez-faire is, then it means the absence of a one-size-fits-all public solution, governmental solution.
Right. And, what I would say to the breaks is the whole idea is that people will act in their best interest, and nobody's going to think it's in their best interest to remove the brakes from their car.
Oh, I know.
So you don't need a law saying you need brakes on your car because anybody who's going to be driving is going to have brakes in their car.
Well, and the other point is, reason why we have more stupidity in America, I think, is we're too worried about holding people by the hand through life.
Exactly.
Well, of course they can't they're struggling to make smart decisions. If you coddle them like a little child, well, guess what? They're going to eventually just completely surrender their intellectual capacity.
Yeah, exactly.
Let them be free.
Well, Don, I once again appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for letting me monopolize so much of your time.
That's all right. If you want to blow your job off and stay, you're more than welcome.
I need my job. My wife knows I need my job.
All right. Well, this is let's see, it's McDonald's time is 3:29 p.m. Get 2 Filet-O-Fish sandwiches for just $3.99. You got to remember Lent's coming up starting next week.
Oh yeah, Fridays.
That's right. And
Ash Wednesday.
That's right. And you've been listening, or you're still listening, and hopefully you will continue to listen to Tom Lucente on the Talk with Ron Williams radio show on 940 WCIT and 940WCIT.com.
Jason Schutz of Schutz Potatoes in Pandora to tell us about a big sale going on right now during February.